Black businesswoman dresses like a beggar in her own restaurant, but what happens next shocks everyone. Rachel looked over Flavors of Heritage with a mix of pride and disappointment. The restaurant, once a vibrant and inclusive dream, had now become a symbol of elitism that she had tried so hard to fight against. The walls, adorned with photos of traditional dishes and posters from community events, seemed to scream for an authenticity that had been lost along the way. A spark of guilt coursed through her as she remembered the pure intentions that had driven her to open the restaurant. What happened to all of this? She murmured to herself, running her fingers over the worn wooden table, feeling the texture that mirrored her own internal struggle. Across the kitchen, Jason, a talented chef from humble beginnings, was frantically stirring pots of steaming food. The aroma of spices echoed his childhood memories, helping his mother in the kitchen, learning recipes passed down through generations. He looked at the dish he was creating, a combination of flavors that represented his heritage, but the pressure from the restaurant's elite weighed heavily on his shoulders. If I don't create something innovative, they'll never accept it, he thought, frustrated. With a deep sigh, he tasted a bit of the sauce on a spoon. It still needs something. But what? He questioned, looking at the ingredients laid out on the counter. Jason, have you thought about using your grandmother's seasoning, the one we loved? Monica, Rachel's assistant, asked as she entered the kitchen. She always admired Jason's passion and skill, but also felt the pressure to please the chef and fit into the elitist environment that dominated the restaurant. Monica, you know that won't work here. They want something that surprises them, something that is different, Jason replied, his voice heavy with discouragement. They don't care about my culture, they just want whatever sparkles. But what if what sparkles is your story? What's wrong with showing the truth? Monica insisted, trying to ignite a spark of hope in Jason's eyes. Rachel always talked about celebrating diversity. Why not bring that to the plate? Jason shook his head, skeptical. It's easy to say, but you don't know how they are. Look at them. They just want another flashy presentation, not a piece of my life. Meanwhile, Rachel felt the tension rising among the staff. She knew Jason was fighting for something more meaningful, but the financial pressures and the need to maintain an elite clientele put her in a dilemma. I can't be the only one who sees this, she thought, as she walked through the dining room, listening to the superficial conversations of the customers. Is this what I created? A stage for ostentation? Monica, watching Rachel, noticed the shadow of doubt in her eyes. Rachel, maybe it's time to reconsider what we really want here. People are starting to notice that we're losing our essence, she said hesitantly. Rachel turned to her, surprised by the boldness. What do you mean by that, Monica? I mean people want more than just a meal. They want to connect, to understand, to feel something real. And Jason, he has something to offer, something that could make a difference, Monica replied, her determination growing. Rachel felt a tightness in her heart. I know, but what if it all fails? What if we lose what we've built? Sometimes taking a risk is the only way to find what truly matters, said Monica, looking into Rachel's eyes, searching for an answer. In that moment, Rachel realized that change wouldn't come without a cost, but perhaps it was time to confront her own contradictions. Maybe you're right, Monica. We need to reevaluate all of this. As Jason continued his struggle in the kitchen, the connection among the three began to form slowly, like a recipe that still needed time to ferment and mature. Time was passing, and a community event was approaching. But what unfolded in the coming days could change the future of Flavors of Heritage forever. Rachel sat alone in her office, surrounded by a pile of documents and reports about the recent events at Flavors of Heritage. Looking out the window, her gaze landed on a framed photo on her desk. It was an old picture of her mother, smiling at a community event, surrounded by people from different backgrounds, all united by a common love for food. The contrast between that vibrant scene and the elitist reality, her restaurant had become weighed heavily on her heart. She picked up the photo and studied it closely. How did I end up here, she thought, recalling the stories her mother told about the struggle for equality and inclusion. She always believed that food could be a bridge between people, not a barrier. Rachel sighed, feeling guilty for having strayed from her own convictions. Meanwhile, Jason was in his small kitchen, focused on his pots and ingredients. The smell of homemade seasoning filled the air, but his mind was restless. He chopped onions, his tears not just from the pungent smell, but from the frustration building in his chest. Why can't they see the value of our culture? He murmured to himself, recalling the elite demands of the restaurant. They want innovation, but what I want is to honor my roots." At that moment, his mother entered the kitchen. "What's wrong with you, son?" she asked, noticing the tension on his face. "Don't let the pressure change who you really are." Jason paused for a moment, looking into his mother's eyes. "I want to create something that represents my culture, but I feel like it's not what they want. They want something different, something that makes them feel special. And what do I do? Just adapt to that?" His mother sighed. "Don't forget who you are. Promise me you'll make a dish that honors our traditions. That's what matters." Jason's gaze firmed, and he nodded slowly. "I will do that, Mom. I'll create something that represents our story." Meanwhile, Monica, Rachel's assistant, watched the interaction between Jason and his mother through the kitchen window. She felt increasingly isolated, torn between loyalty to Rachel and her own cultural identity. "I don't know if this is what I want," she thought, reflecting on what was happening around her. After a long day at work, she decided to meet some friends at a local cafe. "You know, I feel lost," she confided to one of them as she nervously stirred her cup of coffee. "Rachel has drifted so far from what united us. I can't understand why she doesn't see what's happening." "Maybe she got lost on the path to success," her friend replied, "but you can find your own way. You don't have to follow what others expect of you." Monica pondered those words. "I want to do something that brings back the essence of what really matters. Food shouldn't just be a way to show status, but a way to connect people." Before we continue with this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories, and let us know which city you're watching this video from in the comments. The conversation sparked a glimmer of hope in her heart. As she walked away from the cafe, she decided she couldn't live in Rachel's shadow any longer. "I need to find my own voice," she affirmed to herself, determined to explore her identity and what it truly meant to be part of that community. Thus, the destinies of Rachel, Jason, and Monica began to intertwine, each grappling with their own internal battles, but all driven by the desire to reconnect with their roots and celebrate the culture that united them. Mrs. Eleanor entered Flavors of Heritage like a fresh breeze on a hot summer day. The old friend of Rachel's mother brought with her an aura of history and resilience that immediately captured the entrepreneur's attention. As the door closed behind her, Rachel stood behind the counter, organizing some bottles of olive oil when she spotted Eleanor. The expression on the older woman's face was one of warmth, but also of firmness. "Rachel, dear, it's been so long," exclaimed Mrs. Eleanor, pulling the entrepreneur into a warm embrace. "You look so much like your mother, especially when you're worried about the world." Rachel smiled, but the mention of her mother made her feel a weight in her heart. "Hi, Eleanor. It's good to see you. How have you been?" "I'm well, but I can't help but feel that you're losing your way a bit, my dear. This place, it's beautiful. But where are the voices of the communities around it?" The question hung in the air, and Rachel felt a chill run down her spine upon hearing the truth in the woman's words. I'm trying to create a space where everyone feels welcome, but sometimes I feel the pressure from the elite is too strong. They want innovation but forget the roots," Rachel said, frustration evident in her voice. "Mrs. Eleanor nodded, her eyes shining with a wisdom that only comes with age. "I remember when your mother organized community dinners in our neighborhood. She made sure that each dish told a story. There was a true connection between people, not just a fancy meal service." Hearing those memories, Rachel felt a lump form in her throat. "I wanted to do the same, Eleanor, but as the restaurant grew, its identity got lost. Flavors of Heritage has become a place where people come to impress one another, not to connect. And do you think that's what your mother wanted? An elite gathering to admire exotic dishes instead of celebrating the diversity that really means something?" Eleanor questioned, her voice firm yet full of love. "It's time for you to find your way back, Rachel. Don't forget what truly matters." Rachel took a deep breath, feeling a spark begin to ignite within her. "You're right. I've strayed so far from what really matters. But what can I do? I'm surrounded by people who don't share that vision. You can start with a simple step. How about organizing an event that brings back that essence? Invite the local communities, celebrate their traditions. Remember that food is a powerful tool for unity," Eleanor suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "A community event," Rachel repeated, the idea starting to take shape in her mind. "But what if the team doesn't support it? They're so focused on maintaining status that they might resist change. And what if you showed them that true wealth comes from diversity? If you open the doors to the stories that need to be told, they'll see the value in it." Your mother always believed that the fight for equality begins at the table, said Eleanor with an encouraging smile. As they talked, Jason entered the kitchen, interrupting the moment. He paused, surprised to see Eleanor. Hi, Mrs. Eleanor, what brings you here? I'm helping Rachel find her way back to her roots, said Eleanor, winking at Jason. And you, young chef, what have you been doing to honor your culture? Jason hesitated, remembering the criticism he had received. I'm trying to balance the elite's expectations with my own traditions, but it's tough. I feel like I'm losing connection with who I really am. So, don't be afraid to express yourself. Food is your voice. Don't let others silence it, advised Eleanor, her presence seeming to illuminate the room. Rachel looked at Jason, feeling a wave of determination. Maybe we should work together, Jason. An event that celebrates our culture, blending tradition and innovation. What do you think? I'd love that. But will it really work? What if the elite doesn't accept it? Jason questioned, insecurity evident in his voice. If they don't accept it, then it's time to redefine what it means to be successful in this place. Rachel replied, now more confident. Let's do this. Let's let the true essence of flavors of heritage shine again. Monica walked through the vibrant streets of her city, feeling the pulsating energy of the community around her. The smell of home-cooked meals mixed with the aroma of fresh fruits at the local markets, making her feel alive. Determined to find a sense of belonging, she recalled hearing about community dinners hosted by a group that valued traditional cuisine. With a mix of anxiety and hope, she headed to the location of the next event. Upon arrival, Monica was welcomed by a warm group of people who greeted her with smiles and hugs. The atmosphere was inviting, and she quickly realized there was no room for elitism or criticism here. Welcome. We're happy to see new faces, exclaimed a silver-haired woman who immediately reminded her of her grandmother. I'm Donna Clara, and this is our tradition. Come, help us prepare the dishes. Monica joined the group in the kitchen, where steaming pots were filled with fresh ingredients. The smell of saffron-seasoned rice and the sound of bubbling beans created a symphony of flavors. As she mixed the ingredients, she began to share her own experiences. I work in a restaurant, but I feel like I'm losing connection with my culture. Sometimes it seems like everything we do is to please the elite, she confessed, looking at Donna Clara. Ah, dear, don't let yourself be swayed by that. True food comes from the heart and our roots. It's not about pleasing others, but about celebrating who we are, replied Donna Clara with an encouraging smile. That conversation sparked a light within Monica. She realized she was surrounded by people who valued authenticity, and that inspired her. Meanwhile, at Flavors of Heritage, Rachel was beginning to feel the weight of reality. The restaurant was losing customers, and the atmosphere among the staff was tense. She sat at her table, watching the empty seats. What are we doing wrong? She murmured to herself, gazing out the window. The restaurant, once a vibrant and welcoming space, now felt like a shadow of what it should be. Rachel decided she needed to take action, but she wasn't sure where to start. Maybe I need help, she thought, picking up the phone and calling Jason. Hey Jason, we need to talk. Flavors isn't doing well, and I don't know how to turn this around. Hey Rachel, I noticed. What do you have in mind? Jason replied, his voice heavy with concern. I think we need something more authentic, something that truly connects people. What do you think about organizing a community event? The silence on the other end was deafening. Rachel knew the idea could be controversial, but it was a risk she might need to take. Do you really think that would work? What if the elite doesn't support it? We need a fresh start, Rachel. The community is craving inclusion. Let's create something everyone can celebrate, Jason insisted, his passion evident. The idea of a community event began to take shape in Rachel's mind, but she was worried about the elitist team's resistance. Back at the community dinner, Monica was excited. Next to Donna Clara, she helped prepare colorful dishes, each with a story. This one is my favorite, Donna Clara said, pointing to a dish of farofa. It's a recipe from my grandmother, who always said that farofa is the heart of the meal. Monica smiled, feeling connected. I'd love to learn how to make that. My grandmother also had her special recipes, but I could never replicate them, she replied, enthusiastic. Then let's make one. The secret is the love we put into every ingredient, Donna Clara encouraged her as they ventured into the kitchen. Later, when the dishes were ready and people began to arrive, Monica felt a wave of happiness. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and animated conversations. Look at this, it's amazing, she commented to a group of new friends. I've never seen so many cultures come together. I finally feel like I belong to something. Meanwhile, at Flavors of Heritage, Rachel watched as criticism surged on social media about the lack of inclusion and authenticity in the restaurant. Her heart ached as she realized that what had initially driven her, celebrating diversity, was now sidelined. We need to change this, she thought, determined to find a way back to her roots and the true purpose of the restaurant. With a desire to reconnect with her legacy, Rachel began to consider Jason's proposal and the idea of a community event. What had once seemed a distant possibility was now an urgent necessity. Above all, she wanted to provide a space where everyone could feel welcomed and celebrated. Rachel sat at her table, observing the movement at Flavors of Heritage. The atmosphere was tense, and the restaurant's elite seemed more concerned with appearances than with the food they served. The walls adorned with local artists' works were nearly forgotten, overshadowed by luxurious floral arrangements that didn't reflect the essence of what the restaurant once aimed to be. The original idea of celebrating diversity was getting lost amidst superficial glamour. With a deep sigh, Rachel decided it was time for change. She began jotting down notes in a notepad, sketching the idea of a community event. It was an attempt to reclaim the restaurant's essence while also creating space for inclusion. But the idea wouldn't be well received by everyone. The elitist team, accustomed to the status quo, was resistant to any change that might threaten their privileged position. "Rachel, do you really think this is a good idea?" asked Andre, the restaurant manager, with a skeptical expression. "The people you want to bring in might end up driving away our regular customers. We can't risk losing what we've built." "What exactly have we built?" Rachel retorted, her voice firm. "A space that excludes most of the population? A place that only serves sophisticated dishes to a minority? We need to go back to our roots and give a voice to those who truly matter." Andre crossed his arms, visibly uncomfortable. "You know this could cause a stir. Our investors aren't going to like the idea of a popular event." "Maybe we need a stir," Rachel replied with determination. "I'm tired of feeling guilty for not honoring what Flavors of Heritage should be. We need to celebrate diversity, not just in words." Meanwhile, Monica sat in a corner of the restaurant, listening to the conversation but increasingly excited about the idea of a community event. In recent days, she had joined a local community that promoted dinners with traditional dishes, and the experience was becoming a new source of inspiration. Watching Jason struggle to create something that represented his culture, Monica began to understand that true culinary art wasn't just about innovation, but about telling stories. After the meeting ended, Monica approached Rachel. "I loved what you said about the roots. I've been thinking about how we can integrate traditional cuisine at Fly. We can create something really special." Rachel looked at Monica, her eyes shining with newfound hope. "Do you have any ideas?" "Yes, we can create a special menu for the community event where each dish tells a story. We can invite local chefs and even the community to bring their dishes. This will not only attract new customers but also show that we're open to all cultures," Monica suggested, enthusiastic. "That's perfect," Rachel exclaimed, feeling adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let's work on this together. We need a menu that's authentic and does justice to all the flavors this city has to offer." Monica was beaming. "What if Jason joins us? He has a strong connection to his roots and could help us create dishes that truly represent diversity." Rachel nodded, already imagining how the collaboration would unfold. Yes, Jason would be a valuable addition. He needs a space where he can shine and show who he really is. Finally, the two headed to the kitchen, where Jason was preparing a new dish. Upon seeing them, he looked up and smiled, though his expression quickly turned worried. "What happened? You both seem excited, but I know this could be dangerous." "We're thinking about organizing a community event," Monica said straightforwardly. "We want you to join us, to create a menu that represents the true cuisine of our town." Jason frowned, hesitant. "What if the elite don't accept it? I'm tired of fighting to be heard." "That's the point," Rachel replied firmly. "We need to take a risk. If we don't do this now, Flavors of Heritage will never become what it should be. It's time to show that food is more than just a pretty presentation. It's also a form of cultural expression. We're all in this together," Monica added, gently touching Jason's arm. "We can make this happen. Let's create something beautiful." Jason took a deep breath, his determination beginning to solidify. "All right then, let's do it. I'll honor my roots and create dishes that tell my story." And so, with a new purpose, The three began to plan the community event that promised not only to transform the restaurant, but also their lives. It was the beginning of something that could rewrite their stories and unite communities in ways they had never thought possible. Rachel sat in her office, surrounded by shelves filled with cookbooks and photos of sophisticated dishes that she once considered the essence of flavors of heritage. However, Mrs. Eleanor's visit had left a deep mark on her conscience. Her mother's old friend not only brought back memories, but also stories that rekindled the fight for equality and inclusion that her family had always championed. She recalled the disappointed look Mrs. Eleanor had given her when she spoke of the roots Rachel seemed to have abandoned in the pursuit of a status that now felt so empty. Meanwhile, Jason was in his small kitchen, the smoke of exotic spices filling the air. He looked at the counter where fresh ingredients were laid out, and his mind was racing. He had decided it was time to honor his roots, but he still felt torn. "Why is this so hard?" he murmured to himself. He picked up a piece of meat and began to slice it, thinking of his mother and how she always encouraged him to never forget where he came from. "You're drifting away from who you really are, Jason," his mother's voice echoed in his mind. He couldn't dismiss what she had said. "It's time to show the world the true essence of our culture," he thought, as he resolved to create a dish that not only represented his heritage, but also celebrated it. That afternoon, Monica felt torn. The shine of success she had felt while helping Rachel now seemed dull. She remembered the conversations she had with Jason about the importance of staying true to their roots, while watching Rachel drift further away from the restaurant's original purpose. If Rachel continues down this path, Flavors of Heritage won't be what it once was, she reflected, gazing at the space that once held vibrant energy from diversity. When Rachel met with Mrs. Eleanor again, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You know, Rachel, your mother always believed that food is a form of resistance," Mrs. Eleanor said, her expression serious. "She fought for everyone to have a place at the table. What you're doing now isn't her legacy." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "But I'm trying to make the restaurant successful. What more can I do?" she defended, but the voice inside her began to question her own decisions. I just want Flavors of Heritage to be respected," she added, a mix of frustration and desperation in her tone. "Respect? Or status? There's a difference, my dear," Mrs. Eleanor replied firmly. "You need to decide what really matters. Are you willing to fight for it?" Those words resonated deeply with Rachel. She knew she had to confront her own personal crisis. But how? The pressure from investors and the elite restaurant scene weighed heavily on her shoulders. Amidst this turmoil, she remembered Jason and his determination to create a dish that honored his roots. "Maybe I need an ally," she thought. Meanwhile, Jason and Monica were coming together on a project that aimed not just to create a menu, but to start a movement. "We can do something that truly represents our culture," Jason said, his eyes sparkling with determination. "What if we combined traditional flavors with a modern twist? That could attract people's attention." "Yes, we can do tastings and invite the community. If they like it, we can present it to Rachel," Monica responded, excited. "This could be what we need to show her that there's a way to unite everyone." The idea was bubbling between them, and even though there were uncertainties about how Rachel would react, both were willing to fight for something greater. Jason felt he was finding his purpose, and Monica, in turn, felt she was reclaiming her connection to her own cultural identity, something that had been lost in the demands of the restaurant's elitist environment. Their determination turned into action, and the two began working together, blending flavors, creating dishes that told stories, and perhaps changing the future of Flavors of Heritage once and for all. But deep down, Rachel needed to realize that the true essence of the restaurant wasn't just in its elegant walls, but in the stories and traditions that each dish could convey. The atmosphere at Flavors of Heritage was tense. Rachel sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her team members, all wearing worried expressions. The dining room was silent, except for the faint clinking of cutlery and nervous whispers. She knew the situation was critical. Pressure mounted with each passing day, and the elite who once supported her now seemed like a pack of predators ready to pounce. "We need to decide quickly about our next event," Rachel said, breaking the silence. "The community is starting to drift away and our clientele is shrinking. We can't ignore this." "But Rachel, what are you suggesting?" Carlos, the operations manager, asked, raising an eyebrow. "A community event? You know that could ruin our reputation among our most influential clients." "Reputation?" Rachel exclaimed, her voice rising. We're losing the essence of what this restaurant represents. Flavors of Heritage was founded to celebrate diversity, not to become an icon of elitism. The tension rose, and some team members began to murmur among themselves. She's right. Monica finally found the courage to speak up. Cooking is about connection, and we're losing that. A community event could bring us back to our true mission. Monica, you're new here, Carlos shot Bassi. Don't forget where we are. We need to stay relevant. Relevant or just rich? Retorted Jason, who had remained silent until now, watching the discussion unfold. If we keep this up, we'll be just another restaurant, devoid of soul. True innovation comes from authenticity. Rachel looked at Jason, admiring his passion. He was right. Authenticity had always driven her heart, but doubt consumed her. What would happen if she took this path? What if the restaurant failed? The fear of failure loomed in her mind like a persistent shadow. I understand your concerns, Carlos, Rachel said, trying to stay calm. But we need to take risks. The elite may not like what we're doing, but what about the community? The people who truly need a space to celebrate their cultures. You're talking about opening our doors to people who can't afford to eat here, Carlos insisted, shaking his head. That could be a colossal mistake. I don't see it as a mistake, Rachel replied firmly. I see it as an opportunity to rewrite our story. Jason and Monica exchanged knowing glances. The atmosphere between them was shifting, and the idea of a community event began to gain momentum. Jason stood up and with a steady voice declared, "If you decide to do this, Monica and I will stand by you. Let's create a menu that represents our roots. And if the elite don't accept it, so be it." "I'm in too," Monica confirmed, filled with determination. "Believing in our mission is what truly matters." "Then it's decided," Rachel announced, feeling more confident. "Let's organize a community event and invite everyone. Let's bring back the diversity that Flavors of Heritage was always meant to represent." The meeting ended with a mix of nervousness and excitement. As the team members dispersed, Rachel felt a wave of relief. It was a risky step, but it was exactly what the restaurant needed. She could feel the roots of her visions starting to sprout again. However, as Rachel retreated to her office, the shadow of the elite still loomed over her. What would happen when they discovered her plans? She knew she would face resistance, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. Flavors of Heritage could indeed become an inclusive space. But the dilemma remained. Would the pressure from the elite force her to choose between her convictions and the restaurant's survival? The community event began with a vibrant buzz echoing through the walls of Flavors of Heritage. The tables, usually impeccably arranged, were now filled with traditional dishes brought by people from diverse backgrounds. The aroma in the air was an irresistible mix of spices, fresh herbs, and memories. Rachel watched everything unfold with a mix of anxiety and hope, her heart beating in tune with the energy of the place. "Look, Rachel," Monica exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "People are so thrilled. Look at how many dishes have been brought." She gestured toward the central table, overflowing with food that reflected each cook's story. "This is amazing. Cooking is truly a way of telling stories." Rachel nodded, her gaze fixed on the diversity around her. "Yes, it's like each dish is sharing a piece of someone's life," she replied, emotion spilling over in her voice. She remembered her childhood, family meals where stories were shared along with every bite. "This is what I always wanted for this place, but I lost my way." "Don't worry about the past, Rachel," Monica said gently. "What matters is that we're here now, and look at how everything is changing." She pointed to a group of people gathered around a large dish of feijoada, laughter and conversations mingling in a contagious rhythm. Meanwhile, Jason stood at the back, observing and soaking in the atmosphere. He approached Rachel and Monica, wearing a smile that reflected both nervousness and determination. "I never imagined I'd see something like this," he said, feeling the pulsating energy of the event. "It's like the restaurant has finally become what it was meant to be." Rachel smiled, but her mind was still filled with worries. "Yes, but is this enough? What if the elite don't accept this? What if they revolt against the change?" "Rachel," Jason replied, his voice steady, "this is an important step. If we don't try, we'll never know what could happen. Look at the people here. They're happy, and that's what really matters." Their conversation was interrupted by a group of children running toward the dessert table, where an elderly woman was serving brigadeiros. "Look, Uncle Jason, brigadeiro, I want some," one of the children shouted, tugging on an adult's hand. The laughter echoed like a melody of hope, and Rachel couldn't help but smile at the genuine joy on the children's faces. "That's it," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's about creating memories, not just for us, but for everyone." She looked at Jason and Monica, a glint of determination in her eyes. "We need to keep this work going. We need to show that food can unite people in a way that nothing else can. And we can start with next month's menu," Monica suggested, inspired. "We could host a series of themed dinners, focusing on the traditions of each group that came today. This could help solidify the connection between them and the restaurant. What do you think?" "That's wonderful," Jason agreed, his enthusiasm growing. "And we can invite the cooks to share their stories during the dinners. That would bring an element of authenticity that the elite could never offer." Rachel looked at them, her heart warmed by the passion reflected in their faces. "Yes, let's do this. Let's create a space where everyone feels welcome and respected," she declared, her confidence blossoming inside her. As the event continued, Rachel observed the interacts. People from different backgrounds sat side by side, sharing dishes and laughter. The atmosphere was filled with a warmth she hadn't felt at Flavors of Heritage in a long time. Amid the flow of conversations and laughter, she spotted Jason and Monica, animated as they showcased their creations, and realized that finally they were all connected by something much larger than just food. "This is just the beginning," Rachel murmured to herself, feeling that for the first time in a long while she was on the right path. The atmosphere at Flavors of Heritage had changed dramatically since the community event. The diversity of dishes and the celebration of culture that had once been absent now filled every corner of the restaurant. Rachel watched, a mix of excitement and apprehension swelling within her as new patrons arrived, drawn by the idea of a place where every dish told a story. She felt she was finally honoring her mother's legacy, but at the same time, the elite patrons who once frequented the restaurant were beginning to feel threatened. That night, as the restaurant buzzed with activity, a prominent member of the elite, Henry Campbell, a well-known food critic famous for his strong opinions, entered Flavors of Heritage with a stern expression. He was one of the restaurant's oldest patrons and had always been a supporter of culinary innovations. Now, however, his eyes were filled with discontent. "Rachel," he called, striding toward her with firm steps. "We need to talk. This place is turning into a circus. What happened to the quality, to the exclusivity that has always been the hallmark of Flavors of Heritage?" Rachel, who was rearranging tables, turned to face him, her heart racing. "Henry, what do you mean? This restaurant has always been about celebration and inclusion. The quality of the dishes has never been higher. Look around, people are happy." "Happy? Or just satisfied with mediocrity?" Henry shot back, his voice rising with indignation. "You're distancing yourself from those who truly If you continue down this path, you'll lose not only our clientele, but your own identity." "Identity? You talk about identity while trying to homogenize the dining experience. What we're doing here is redirecting focus to the true essence of cuisine," Rachel countered, feeling more confident. "Why can't you see beyond your own elitist palate?" Henry crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on Rachel. "And what if I told you that if you don't reverse this situation, investors will start questioning your choices? You know, some of us are considering distancing ourselves from Flavors of Heritage, right?" A chill ran down Rachel's spine. "Are you threatening to boycott me? That's unacceptable, Henry." "It's a warning, Rachel. I'm not saying you can't have your ideas, but you need to understand that this restaurant can't afford to lose its prestige. You have to choose between the community and the status you've worked so hard to achieve," he insisted, his voice now low and intense. As the conversation unfolded, Jason, who had been in the kitchen, sensed the tension and stepped out to see what was happening. Upon seeing Rachel's worried expression, his instincts drove him to intervene. "Is everything okay here?" Jason asked cautiously, approaching them. "We're just discussing the future of the restaurant," Rachel replied, trying to keep her. Henry shot a disdainful look at Jason. "Ah, the chef who decided to prioritize his roots over innovation. You have no idea what you're doing, do you?" Jason, feeling the provocation, didn't hesitate. "Actually, I'm fully aware of what I'm doing. I'm honoring my culture, and that of many others who have never had a voice. We can't continue ignoring the richness that diversity brings to this space." "That's easy to say when it's not your name on the line," Henry retorted, challenging him. Rachel took a deep breath, feeling torn. "Enough, Henry. You may be a powerful critic, but I won't sacrifice the essence of Flavors of Heritage to please the elite." This restaurant is a reflection of who I am and who we are." Henry, realizing the conversation was becoming unproductive, took a step back. "Just know that you're aware of the consequences, Rachel. The elite won't remain silent about this." As Henry walked away, Jason looked at Rachel, concerned. "What are we going to do? He's not the only one who thinks this way." Rachel, her expression filled with determination, replied, "We're going to show them that true cuisine isn't about status. We'll continue to celebrate diversity and inclusion. That's what Flavors of Heritage has always been meant to represent." But as she spoke, a shadow of uncertainty loomed over her. The elite were organizing, and the threat of a boycott was not just a possibility, it was a reality she needed to confront. At the height of the tension in Flavors of Heritage, Rachel felt her heart race as the voices of the elite filled the meeting room. The restaurant, which was supposed to be a space to celebrate diversity, had become a battleground. She looked at Jason and Monica, who stood by her side, and saw the determination in their faces. It was time to reveal the truth she had kept hidden for so long. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rachel began, her voice steady, yet laden with emotion, "I'm here not just as the owner of this restaurant, but as one of the founders of a movement aimed at reimagining the concept of gastronomy in our community." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The most influential member of the elite, a burly man with a piercing gaze, stood up. "What do you mean by that, Rachel? Are you joking with us? You know your position here depends on our approval." "No, I'm not joking," Rachel replied, looking the man in the eye. "I created this space to be a beacon of inclusion, but along the way I lost my way. The pressure to please you made me forget what truly matters, the voices that have been silenced and the stories that were left untold." Jason, standing beside Rachel, rose with a spark of courage in his eyes. "And that's why we're here. The new menu that Monica and I created isn't just a presentation of dishes, but a celebration of our heritages. Every ingredient, every technique is a tribute to our roots. We will not allow the elite to define what true gastronomy is." Monica, her voice trembling yet resolute, added, "We are more than just chefs and assistants. We are part of a community that deserves to be heard, and Flavors of Heritage must be a space that embraces this diversity, not suppresses it." The man's expression shifted to a mix of anger and confusion. "Do you really think you can simply ignore the standards of fine dining? This is absurd." He gestured, trying to intimidate them, but Rachel and her team's determination was palpable. "It's absurd to keep closing the doors to those who have so much to offer," Rachel asserted passionately. "You care about the restaurant's image, but what happened here is that the elite has distanced itself from the true essence of cuisine. We cannot allow this to continue." A heavy silence filled the room. The elite members began to glance at each other, realizing that Rachel was no longer willing to yield to their demands. Deep down, they knew the truth about their own discriminatory practices was about to be exposed. "You are connected to practices that keep entire communities marginalized," Rachel continued, her voice now infused with renewed lightness. "It's time to confront this. True gastronomy is inclusive, and Flavors of Heritage will be a space that reflects that." A younger member of the elite, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Rachel, maybe there's a way forward. If the restaurant becomes a place that embraces diversity, we might achieve something even greater, something that benefits everyone, including you." Rachel felt a wave of hope. "Then let's move forward together. Let's use this space to rewrite our stories and welcome all flavors and cultures. What we start here can be a model of inclusion that reverberates throughout the city." As the discussion progressed, the elite began to realize they were becoming obsolete in a world that demanded more art. Jason and Monica, now more confident, presented the new menu, which not only challenged the norms but celebrated the cultural heritage of everyone involved. Finally, in an act of unmasking, Rachel revealed documents that proved the discrimination many in the elite had perpetrated. "We can no longer ignore this. It's time for you to face what you truly represent." The atmosphere in the restaurant changed forever. Confronted with their actions, the elite members found themselves compelled to recon. Flavors of Heritage transformed into a space where genuine inclusion flourished, and the community came together to celebrate diversity, led by Rachel, Jason, Monica, and Mrs. Eleanor, who had now become the pillars of a new era of acceptance and respect. We've come to the end of this moving story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to continue watching these touching stories, just click on it, and you'll be on your way. And now, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and leave your like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to know your thoughts. Until the next video.